He never expected that one simple act of kindness would change his entire life forever, but that is exactly how this story begins. This is a human story of compassion, survival, and mystery. A story where a man saves what he believes is only a dying animal but discovers something far greater and stranger than he could ever imagine. It is a story of courage, hidden secrets, and the shocking bond between a human heart and something not of this world. The man's name was Eli. He was a traveler, a wanderer who lived far from cities and colonies, choosing the quiet of nature over the noise of human settlements. He often walked through the forests of the planet he now called home, a green world full of rivers, thick trees, and strange creatures. He liked the silence, though inside he carried a deep loneliness. The silence gave him comfort, but sometimes it also reminded him how empty his life had become. On one late afternoon, while the skies burned orange with the setting sun, Eli followed a trail that led deeper into the woods. The air smelled of damp leaves, and the forest was filled with the sounds of insects and distant calls of unknown animals. It was then he heard something unusual, a weak cry, broken and painful, unlike anything he had ever heard before. It was not the roar of a beast or the hiss of a predator. It was smaller, weaker, almost like a plea for help. Curious and concerned, Eli pushed through the thick undergrowth until he reached a small clearing. His heart froze when he saw the source of the sound. Lying on the ground, tangled and broken, branches and covered in dirt and blood, was a small creature unlike anything he had ever seen. Its body was fragile, thin, almost bird-like, with delicate wings that looked torn and useless. Its fur shimmered faintly, a mix of silver and soft white, but the shimmer was fading as if life was leaving it. Its eyes, large and round, stared at him with both fear and pain. For a moment, Eli stood still. His survival instincts told him to leave. This world was full of unknown dangers, and touching an injured alien creature could mean trouble. But when he saw the way it tried weakly to lift its head, how its breath rattled in its small chest, something inside him broke. He could not leave it to die alone. He knew loneliness, and he knew pain, and he could not turn away from it. Eli knelt down slowly, speaking softly as if the creature could understand. "It's all right. I won't hurt you." His voice was low and gentle, though he was unsure why he spoke at all. The creature blinked, its glowing eyes watching him with what almost looked like trust. Carefully he slid his arms under its fragile body, and it shivered at his touch, but did not fight. It was so light, so weak, he feared it might die in his arms before he even reached his shelter. He hurried back along the trail, moving as fast as he could while holding the delicate being close to his chest. The forest seemed darker now, the sounds louder, as if unseen predators were watching. His heart raced, but he did not stop until he reached his small cabin built at the edge of the woods. Inside, he placed the creature gently on a blanket near the fire, its breath shallow, its body trembling. Eli fetched water and a healing kit he had kept from his supply crate. His hands worked quickly, cleaning the wounds, wrapping soft bandages around broken wings and cuts. He warmed a little food. But the creature could not eat much, only sipping weakly from the water he offered. He sat close to it for hours, watching as it shifted in uneasy sleep, making soft sounds almost like whispers. That night, as the fire crackled softly, Eli looked at the creature and wondered, what was it? He had seen strange animals before, but nothing like this. Its body had patterns on its skin that glowed faintly in the dark, like thin lines of light running under its fur. When he touched its wing to adjust the bandage, the glow spread faintly across its body, then faded again. He frowned, unsettled but also deeply curious. Something about this being touched him in a way he did not understand. Perhaps it was because it looked so helpless, or because it reminded him of himself, broken and lost in a world that was not truly his home. He found himself whispering to it as if it were a companion, telling it small things about his day, about the forest, about the loneliness that haunted him. He knew it could not understand, yet it seemed to listen. At one point, as he sat back watching the flames, he thought he heard a sound. It was not the crack of wood or the call of the night outside. It was softer, closer, almost like a voice. He turned his head sharply toward the creature, but its eyes were closed. Still, he could not shake the feeling that the whisper had come. From it, the hours passed and the night grew colder. Ailey covered the creature with another cloth, watching as its chest rose and fell with effort. He could not know if it would survive until morning. He had done everything he could, but its life was now in the hands of fate. Yet deep inside, something told him that this was no ordinary encounter, that this fragile being was more than it. Appeared. Before he finally closed his eyes in exhaustion, he glanced at it one last time. In the dim glow of the firelight, the faint lines on its body pulsed with light, brighter than before, as if responding to his presence. For a brief moment, the creature seemed to change shape, its features shifting almost imperceptibly, before returning to its fragile form. Ailey blinked, unsure if he had imagined it or if his tired eyes played tricks on him. Sleep took him then, heavy and deep, while outside the forest stirred with unknown movements. In his shelter, by the fire's glow, the strange creature lay weak but alive, its body shimmering faintly with hidden power. Eli did not know it yet, but his choice to save this dying animal would draw him into a mystery that would shatter the silence of his life forever. Something ancient and powerful had just entered his world, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning light broke through the small window of Eli's cabin, spreading across the wooden floor and touching the fragile creature lying on the blanket near the fire. Eli opened his eyes slowly, his body stiff from the hard chair he had slept on. The first thing he did was look toward the small being he had rescued the night before. His heart beat faster when he saw it was still alive. Its chest moved with faint but steady breaths, and its glowing lines, those strange patterns under its fur, seemed brighter in the daylight. Eli moved closer, kneeling beside it. The wounds he had treated looked cleaner, almost healed in ways that were not possible overnight. He frowned, brushing his hand gently across its side, and the glow followed his touch like ripples of light across water. He pulled back quickly, unsettled, and yet his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He had always known this planet was strange, but never had he seen such a thing. The creature stirred, opening its eyes slowly. They were large and clear, with a shimmer that seemed almost human in their depth. Eli froze, watching as it blinked. At him, not with the blind panic of an animal but with recognition, as though it remembered him. He whispered softly, "You are safe now, I will not hurt you." To his surprise, its gaze softened, and its breathing steadied, as though his voice calmed it. The hours of the morning passed in silence, broken only by the soft crackle of fire and the sound of Eli moving about the cabin. He tried to prepare food for himself, but he kept turning back to the creature, drawn to its strange presence. At one point he noticed something that made his breath catch. It was watching him, following his movements with its glowing eyes, and when he spoke aloud, even simple words, it tilted its head in ways that mirrored understanding. That night, after tending to its wounds again, Eli sat by the fire and spoke to it as though it were a companion. He told it of his travels, of why he lived alone so far from the settlements, of how silence was both his friend and his enemy. He spoke of loneliness, of memories of a life he had left behind. To anyone else, it would have sounded like a man talking to himself, but here, in the presence of this strange being, it felt different. The creature listened. It responded not with words but with small gestures, with quiet sounds, and most of all with those glowing eyes that never looked away from him. As the night grew deeper, Eli leaned back, his thoughts heavy. Then it happened again. He heard it. Faint at first, like the sound of air moving through the trees. But inside his cabin, there was no wind. A whisper, soft and fragile, brushing against his mind rather than his ears. He sat up sharply, eyes wide. The creature had not moved, yet its glowing patterns were brighter, pulsing softly. The whisper came again, and though it was not in any language he knew, he understood the feeling behind it. It was gratitude. Eli's breath caught. He did not know how or why, but he was certain the voice had come from the creature. He stared at it, his heart racing. "Was that you?" he whispered, almost afraid of the answer. The creature's eyes shimmered in the firelight, and for the briefest moment he saw its shape blur, its outline shifting slightly, as if it were not fixed in one form. Then, as quickly as it began, the light faded, and the creature collapsed back into stillness. That night Eli did not sleep well. His mind swirled with questions he could not answer. What was this being he had saved? Was it dangerous? Was it something sacred, something beyond his understanding? He thought of sending a message to the nearest settlement, but a voice deep inside told him not to. Something about this felt personal, as if it had chosen him, and he could not bring himself to hand it over to scientists or strangers, who might treat it as an experiment. The next day, the changes grew stronger. The creature began to move more easily, its wounds closing faster than any natural healing. It followed him with its eyes wherever he went, and sometimes, when he left the cabin for water, he returned to find it standing weakly, trying to walk on fragile legs. Eli would rush to it, guiding it gently back to the blanket. Its body seemed to shift at times, stretching taller for just a second before returning to its animal shape. The sight unsettled him, but at the same time it filled him with awe. One evening, as the fire burned low, Eli sat close to it, and without thinking he reached out to stroke its fur. The glow spread beneath his fingers, and this time it did not fade. Instead, the light grew stronger, surrounding the creature in a faint shimmer. Eli's eyes widened as he watched its small frame lengthen, its limbs shifting, its body glowing brighter and brighter until he could hardly see. He pulled back, in shock, shielding his eyes from the brilliance. When the light dimmed, Eli lowered his hand, and his breath caught in his throat. Lying on the blanket was no longer the fragile animal he had rescued. Before him now was a shape that was unmistakably humanoid, delicate and strange, with features both alien and familiar. Long silver hair spilled across the blanket, skin smooth and pale, and faint glowing lines traced across arms and shoulders like living tattoos. Eyes that had once belonged to a creature now stared at him with awareness, filled with both sorrow and gratitude. Eli stumbled back, his heart pounding. He did not understand what he was seeing, only that it was impossible, something out of stories and myths. Yet the figure on the blanket looked at him with recognition, with trust, as though the bond they had formed in silence had carried through this transformation. The cabin was quiet except for the sound of his own breath. Eli could not find words. The being shifted weakly, trying to sit up, and when it spoke, the sound was soft and broken, yet clear. "You saved me." The words froze Eli where he stood. He had not expected speech, not in his own tongue. He stared, struggling to believe what he heard. The figure's voice was fragile, trembling with exhaustion, but the meaning was undeniable. Eli swallowed hard, his mind reeling. The creature he had rescued was no ordinary animal. It was something far greater, something hidden and powerful. Something that had chosen to reveal itself to him alone. Suspense gripped him, and he realized his quiet, lonely life had just been shattered forever. Whatever this being was, it was only the beginning of a story far larger than anything he had ever known. The fire in the cabin burned low as Eli stared at the figure before him, his thoughts tangled between fear and wonder. Only a day ago he had carried a dying animal into his shelter, believing it was nothing more than a fragile creature. But now lying on his blanket was a young alien woman with silver hair, glowing marks across her skin, and eyes that shone like stars. She looked both human and not human, both vulnerable and powerful, and Eli could hardly breathe as she whispered the words again. "You saved me." His lips parted, but no sound came. He was a man used to silence, used to living alone with no one to share his thoughts. Yet now his cabin felt filled with something far larger than himself. Slowly he found his voice. "What are you?" His words were rough, but they were all he could manage. The woman's eyes softened with sorrow. She tried to sit up, her movements weak and fragile. But Eli rushed forward, steadying her with careful hands. Her skin was warm, and the glowing lines pulsed faintly under his touch as, though alive. She looked at him with gratitude and pain. "I am not from this world," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I am the daughter of a hidden kingdom far beyond the stars. I came here to escape death." Eli's heart raced. The words sounded unreal, like something from old myths whispered around campfires, but her eyes carried truth, and the weight of her voice told him she was not lying. He sat back slowly, his mind spinning. "You were the creature." "The animal," she nodded faintly. "It was the only way to hide. I changed myself, but the transformation broke my strength. I would have died if you had not found me." Her voice broke, and for a moment she looked less like a princess and more like a lost child. Fragile and afraid. Eli felt something stir inside him, a mix of pity, protectiveness, and awe. He had never cared for royalty, never cared for the lives of the powerful, but here in his cabin was a being who had trusted him, who had survived only because of his choice to show mercy. He asked carefully, "Why were you running? Who wanted you dead?" The woman's gaze darkened, her silver eyes filled with shadows. "My people live hidden from others. For centuries we kept ourselves apart, guarding secrets too dangerous for those who hunger for power. But there are enemies who found us, enemies who want control of what we protect. They attacked without mercy, and I was their target, for I am the last of my line. If I die, my people will fall." Her voice shook as she spoke, but her words carried strength. The strength of someone who had seen fear and loss, but still held on to hope. Eli sat in silence, the crackle of fire the only sound between them. His chest felt heavy as he listened. He had lived alone for years, far from battles and politics, but now danger had walked into his life, uninvited yet impossible to ignore. He looked at her and saw not just a princess, but a survivor, someone who had lost everything yet still breathed because of him. The woman lowered her eyes. "I am weak now, but my enemies will come. They will search for me, and when they do, they will bring death to all who stand in their way." Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I have put you in danger. I am sorry." Eli shook his head slowly. "You didn't choose me. I chose you when I carried you out of the forest. I will not turn away now." His voice was steady, though fear pressed hard against his heart. He had never been a soldier, never been a protector of anyone but himself. But as he looked at her fragile form, he felt a strength inside he had not known before. The princess's eyes filled with emotion, a shimmer of tears that caught the firelight. "Why?" she asked softly, almost desperately. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" Eli's gaze did not leave hers. "Because you were alone, because you were dying, because I know what it feels like to have no one." His words were simple, but they carried truth, and she understood. That night the bond between them grew stronger. Eli helped her drink, helped her sit upright, and listened as she spoke of her hidden world, a place of silver towers and glowing skies, where her people lived in harmony until the darkness of war spread across their land. She spoke of her father and mother, rulers who had fallen defending her, and of the burden she carried as the last hope of her kind. Her voice broke often, but Eli listened in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of her story. As the hours passed, Eli realized something strange. The whispers he had heard before were not only in his ears, but in his mind. When the princess grew too weak to speak aloud, her thoughts touched his own, soft and gentle, carrying images and feelings he had never known. He saw glimpses of her world, flashes of battles, and the desperate flight that had brought her here. It was not just words. It was connection, something deeper than language. When the fire burned low, Eli stood at the door of the cabin, staring out into the night. The forest was quiet, but he felt a chill crawl up his spine, as though unseen eyes were watching. He knew her enemies would come. They were not human, and he did not know how strong they were, but he could feel the shadow of danger pressing closer with each passing hour. Behind him, the princess whispered, her voice soft and weary. "They will find me." "They always do." Eli turned, his jaw set. "Then let them come. I will not let them take you." She looked at him with wide eyes, and for a moment, the fear faded, replaced by something else: hope. A faint smile touched her lips before exhaustion pulled her into sleep. Eli stood in silence, watching her breathe, his thoughts heavy. He was only one man, a wanderer with no army, no weapons, but his own hands and courage. Yet he knew he could not walk away. Something had changed inside him the moment he carried her into his home. And now her survival was tied to his own. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a faint light flickered in the sky. Eli did not see it, but it was there, a ship descending silently, searching, hunting. The princesses. Enemies were closer than either of them knew, and soon the quiet life Eli had lived would be shattered by fire and blood. The first warning came at dusk, when the wind shifted and carried a strange hum across the forest. Eli had been tending to the princess, keeping her warm and feeding her as best he could. Her strength was returning slowly, but she still leaned on him for support, and every movement reminded him how fragile she remained. He had just stepped outside to check the perimeter when the hum grew louder, low and metallic, vibrating through the earth beneath his feet. He froze, heart pounding. He had sensed danger before, but this was different. It was not a wild animal. It was mechanical, controlled, precise. Somewhere in the sky above, he knew, enemy ships were descending, scanning, searching. Eli rushed back to the cabin, gathering the princess in his arms. Her eyes opened wide in fear, and she clutched him, her glowing marks pulsing faintly, a warning of the power she still struggled to control. "They're here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can feel them." Eli nodded, gripping her tighter. He had no weapons, only his wits and his courage, but he refused to let panic take over. The forest around them was dense with trees and rocks, a labyrinth of shadows that could hide them if they moved carefully. He led her out the back of the cabin, down a narrow trail that twisted through the woods. She leaned on him, whispering guidance about paths only she seemed to know, and he followed without hesitation. Though every snap of a twig made his pulse jump, the hum grew louder as they ran. In the distance, he could see faint lights moving among the treetops, glowing red and blue, cutting through the darkness. The ships were fast, and he knew that if they were caught in open ground, they would be finished before they could fight. He needed to stay hidden, and more than that, he needed to keep the princess safe. As they ran, he noticed her strength slowly returning, though she still moved cautiously. "I can guide us," she said quietly, leaning against his shoulder. "But I cannot fight them yet. You must be ready to protect me." "I will," he replied, though doubt gnawed at him. He had never faced enemies like these. He had never faced anything like this in his quiet life. Yet he could feel something rising inside him, a courage, born of the bond he shared with her. He would not abandon her, even if it meant risking his life. The trail led them to a narrow canyon, walls steep and lined with jagged rocks. The ships hovered above, scanning, their lights moving in search patterns, and Eli realized this was the moment he had feared. They had nowhere to hide in open space. The princess whispered, "We must climb. There's a hidden cave above. It will hold us at least for a while." With careful steps, he guided her up the rocky path, supporting her as they climbed. The forest below seemed endless, full of shadows and distant light, and the hum of the ships was like a predator's growl. Each step was heavy with tension, each movement watched by eyes that did not belong to their world. When they reached the cave, Eli felt a momentary relief. It was dark, enclosed, and hidden from the scanning lights. He set the princess down gently, brushing dust from her silver hair. She looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and fear shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Eli nodded, his jaw tight. "We are not safe yet. They will search here." Hours passed in silence. The cave was cold, the walls damp, and the only sound was the faint drip of water. The princess leaned against him, exhausted but alert, and Eli kept watch at the entrance. His mind raced with plans, with what little he could do to protect her. He thought of traps, distractions, anything to delay their enemies. Yet he knew. They were fast, precise, and relentless. Suddenly the quiet was broken by a loud thud outside. Eli froze. He pressed a finger to his lips, and the princess tensed beside him. Another thud, closer this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of claws or mechanical limbs scraping against rock. The hunters had found them. Eli's heart pounded, but he forced himself to remain calm. He whispered, "Stay close to me. Do not make a sound." She nodded, her glowing lines pulsing brighter, and he could feel her fear and determination mixing with his own. The cave was their only sanctuary, but they both knew it would not hold for long. Minutes passed, and the sounds grew louder. Then came the first strike, a sharp crash at the entrance, followed by another. Rocks fell from the ceiling as Eli grabbed a sturdy branch, ready to defend her with everything he had. The princess reached out, her hand glowing faintly, and he felt a surge of energy from her, a hint of the power that had been hidden within her. It was not enough to fight fully, but enough to buy them time. Together they pushed back the attackers. As best they could, Eli swung the branch, knocking aside the nearest intruder, while the princess's energy pulsed like a shield, deflecting strikes that would have ended them. Their bond, formed in the quiet hours of trust and care, now became their greatest strength. They moved as one, instinct guiding them, hearts beating together in fear and courage. Hours of struggle passed, the sounds of battle echoing through the cave and forest. Eli's muscles ached, his chest burned, yet he never let go of her hand. The princess, though exhausted, continued to guide him, her whispers shaping their defense. She was still weak, still fragile, but the fire in her eyes told him she would not surrender. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the attackers retreated, their ships retreating into the darkness above. The cave was quiet once more, though. The walls were scarred and the ground littered with broken rocks. Eli sank to his knees, breathing heavily, and looked at the princess. She was trembling, exhausted, but alive. Her glowing lines flickered softly, and she smiled faintly at him. A mix of relief and gratitude. "We survived," she whispered, leaning against him. "For now," Eli nodded, his heart still racing. "We will survive. Whatever comes, we face it together." As they rested, the bond between them deepened. Fear, danger, and shared struggle had formed a connection stronger than words. Eli knew the hunt was far from over, that more dangers would come, but he also knew that as long as they had each other, there was hope. The princess, once a fragile animal, now showed glimpses of the power within her, And Eli realized that his courage and compassion had awakened something far greater than he had ever imagined. Outside, the forest returned to its quiet rhythm, but the stars above seemed sharper, brighter, as if watching them, as if aware of the story that had begun in silence and now burned with life, danger, and promise. The forest was silent except for the distant hum of retreating ships. Eli and the princess had survived the first attack, but he knew this was not the end. Danger still lurked beyond the trees, and their enemies would return, stronger and more determined. Yet in the cave, he felt a strange sense of calm, a fragile hope that they could endure whatever came next. The princess leaned against him, her body weak but her glowing marks flickering with renewed strength. "I can feel it," she whispered. "The power inside me, it is awake, but it is not complete. I need time, and you. You have given me time." Eli nodded silently, understanding that his compassion, his courage, had done more than save her life. It had awakened the very essence of who she was. Suddenly, a shadow moved outside the cave entrance, and Eli's heart leapt. He pushed the princess gently behind him, standing tall despite exhaustion. He was just one human, but he refused to let fear control him. The shadow grew, and then the hunters appeared, moving swiftly, their glowing weapons raised, eyes fixed on their target. Eli's mind raced, searching for any way to protect the princess. The princess stepped forward, her silver hair catching the dim light, her glowing lines pulsing brightly. "Stand back," she said, her voice stronger than before. Eli could see her confidence growing, her hidden strength returning. She raised her hand, and energy flared around her, a shield of light that shimmered like water in the moonlight. The hunters struck, but their weapons collided with the shield, sparks flying, their strikes failing to break through. Eli watched, awe and fear mingling in his chest, as the princess's power expanded. She moved with grace and force, every motion precise, every gesture carrying the weight of her lineage. She was no longer the fragile creature he had found. She was the alien princess, the last hope of her people, and she was determined to survive. Together they moved through the cave, guiding each other, combining his courage with her strength. The battle raged for hours, but Eli realized something extraordinary. He had given her more than protection. He had given her trust. That trust fueled her power, allowing her to repel the attackers. Every strike she made was deliberate, every move calculated, and slowly the hunters began to retreat, confused by the unexpected force of one human and the princess they had underestimated. Finally, the last hunter fell back, their ships retreating into the dark sky. The forest returned to its natural rhythm, and the silence felt heavy with relief. Eli sank to the ground, breathing hard, and looked at the princess. She was still glowing, her power stabilizing, but she was exhausted. Her eyes met his, and in them, he saw gratitude, relief, and something deeper, respect and trust that could not be broken. "You saved me again," she whispered, voice soft and full of emotion. "I would have fallen if not for you. Not just once, but many times. Your heart. It is stronger than any weapon, stronger than fear itself." Eli shook his head, unsure what to say. He had only acted out of instinct, out of the simple truth that he could not leave a dying creature to perish alone. And yet, in saving her, he had changed everything. They sat together in the cave as the night deepened. Eli tended to her wounds, helping her sit and drink water, and she spoke quietly about her people, her kingdom, and the future she hoped to protect. "I never believed humans could be more than selfish, cruel, or careless," she said softly. "But you have shown me something I did not think existed. You have shown me kindness, courage, and hope." Eli smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through him. "I am just a man who does what he can," he replied. "I didn't know I could change your fate, but I am glad I could." The princess's hand brushed against his, a gesture of connection, and for the first time, Eli realized that saving her had given his life purpose beyond the quiet loneliness he had known for so long. The night passed slowly, and by morning the princess's strength had returned enough for her to speak of the next step. "We must leave this world," she said. "The enemies may return, and there are others who will come for me. But you can come with me. You will not be alone, and together we can protect my people and our future." Eli felt a surge of hope and fear. Leaving everything behind, stepping into a new world of unknown dangers and wonders, was terrifying. Yet he could not deny the pull of destiny that had brought them together. When they emerged from the cave, the sky was bright with the early sun, illuminating the forest. In golden light, the world seemed ordinary, yet Eli knew it had changed. He had carried a dying creature into his life, and that act of compassion had led to this, a bond with a being of incredible power, a glimpse of a hidden kingdom, and a future filled with possibilities beyond imagination. The princess smiled, her glowing lines flickering softly, and she held out her hand. "Will you come with me?" she asked. Eli took her hand without hesitation. He felt the weight of the past, the loneliness he had endured, and the courage that had carried him through the forest and cave. He also felt hope, a new purpose, and a connection that could not be broken. Together they stepped forward, leaving the forest behind, moving toward a future where danger and wonder waited in equal measure. The princess's enemies were still out there, but they had survived, and the bond between human and alien was stronger than fear or power alone. They would face the unknown side by side, and Eli knew that the choice he had made to save a dying animal had given him a destiny greater than he had ever imagined. For the first time in his life, he felt he truly belonged, not in the solitude of forests or the quiet of distant worlds, but in the heart of something extraordinary, something that bridged species, worlds, and the limits of imagination. He had saved a life, and in doing so, his life had been saved and transformed in ways he could never have foreseen. As they moved forward, hand in hand, the sun rose higher, bathing the forest and mountains in light, a symbol of hope, courage, and the extraordinary power of compassion. Eli knew that whatever came next, he would face it with her, and that their story, begun in silence and fear, would continue as a legend of trust, bravery, and the unbreakable bond between a human heart and the last alien princess. The world was wide and full of danger, but for the first time, Eli felt ready. They had survived, they had grown stronger, and they had discovered that even the smallest act of kindness could change the course of destiny. The princess smiled at him, and he returned the smile, feeling a connection that would last beyond time and space. Together they walked into the unknown, ready for the adventures, challenges, and wonders that awaited, knowing that courage, compassion, and trust would carry them through all. The end.